The night Chang'an knelt, one man refused. They stripped him of his title. They erased his family name. They called him a traitor before the entire court. But they forgot one thing. Some men do not rise because they want power. They rise because the world leaves them no other choice. And before the sun returned to the palace gates, every minister who mocked him would learn why Chang'an should have bowed to him first. Chapter 1. The Edict in the Rain. That night, rain poured over Chang'an as if the sky itself had split open. Silver sheets of water slanted across the glazed tiles of the left chancellor's residence, shaking the red lanterns beneath the eaves until they trembled like frightened hearts. Lin Jingji stood alone in the courtyard. Her mourning robe clung to her shoulders. Wet strands of hair stuck to her cheeks. Hemp rope had bitten into both wrists until thin red marks rose beneath her skin. Before her were 36 stone steps leading up to the main hall, where Left Chancellor Xie Yuan sat behind a bamboo screen. Outside the hall, noble guests who had just left the banquet still lingered, along with officials high and low. They looked at her as if she were an unlucky thing placed in the wrong corner of a day that belonged to power. 3 double hours earlier, her father, Lin Huaijin, a director in the Ministry of Revenue, had been found lifeless in his study. On his desk lay a confession claiming that he had embezzled relief silver meant for Chang'an, colluded with merchants, and allowed starving civilians to fall beside the riverbanks. The censorate sealed the Lin residence that very night. Her mother fainted before an ancestral tablet could even be set up. And Jingji, the only daughter her father had ever taught to read accounts, was dragged to the Left Chancellor's residence to hear the final decision. Confess on her father's behalf, surrender the key to the private storeroom, and leave the capital in silence. Xie Yuan did not step out. Only his low, cold voice came through the screen. When an entire household is guilty, being allowed to live is already mercy. Miss Lin, kneel, sign your name, and this matter ends here. The confession was placed on a wooden desk in the courtyard. The ink had already been ground. The official seal was red as a wound. A steward of the chancellor's household came down and bowed with perfect courtesy, though his eyes were full of contempt. Miss Lin, please do not make things difficult. Your father is gone. His reputation cannot be saved. If you insist on being stubborn, Madame Lin will only suffer more. Jingji looked at the words on the page. Every stroke imitated her father's handwriting, yet the writer had made one tiny mistake. In the phrase, "the people's livelihood," the final stroke of the character for people bent in the wrong direction. Her father had written that character with particular weight all his life, because he said that an official who forgot the people turned his brush into a blade. How could a man who lived by that belief confess to taking the grain meant to save the hungry? She bent down and picked up the brush. The guests exhaled, thinking the matter had finally settled. Even the steward smiled, as if he had watched an ant learn to crawl in the proper direction. But Jingji did not sign. She dipped the brush into ink and slowly drew a long black line across the confession. The ink cut through the red seal, through her father's name, through every sentence written in advance for a man who could no longer answer. The entire courtyard fell silent. Rain fell on oil paper umbrellas, on brocade robes of honored guests, and into the chests of people used to living within an order built on bowed heads. Jingji lifted her face and looked straight at the bamboo screen. She knew the man behind it could decide the fate of her whole family with a flick of his sleeve. Precisely because she knew it, her voice became clearer. My father did not confess. Neither will I.
The bamboo screen stirred. Xie Yuan finally rose. He was tall, and his shadow fell across the floor tiles like a vast stroke of ink. He did not rage. He did not shout. People who truly held power rarely needed to raise their voices. He only looked at her with eyes that could make court officials tremble and asked, "Do you know whom you are challenging?" Jingji clenched the brush until it snapped in two. The red marks on her palm mixed with rainwater and fell onto the torn confession. She answered, "I am not challenging the Left Chancellor. I only want to ask the court of Great Yu, after a man is gone, is he still allowed to speak the truth?" The question was like a spark thrown into dry straw. Some faces changed, others stepped back half a pace. Everyone in the capital knew that Chang'an relief silver was not merely a case, it was a rope tied around the Ministry of Revenue, the Ministry of Works, the transport offices, the merchant guilds, and perhaps even the Eastern Palace. Once Lin Huaijin fell, the case should have closed, but his 18-year-old daughter had used one stroke of ink to reopen it in front of them all. Xie Yuan descended one step. "Take her away." 2 guards advanced. Jingji was dragged across the courtyard, her knees striking stone with a sharp ache. Before her mouth could be covered, however, she laughed. It was not a loud laugh, yet everyone who heard it felt a chill. She knew that from this moment on, those who hid silver inside the bones of the hungry would have to remember her name.
Chapter 2. The Pawn Chosen for the Game. The prison of the Court of Judicial Review stood in the northwest corner of the imperial city, a place that seemed never to see sunlight. People said its walls were so thick that even cries of injustice could not escape. Jingji was thrown into a damp cell where moldy straw covered the floor, and the window was no larger than a palm. The rain from the previous night had not stopped. Cold crept into her bones, yet she did not shake. From the moment she had been taken from the Xie residence, she had replayed every word, every glance, every person who had stood in that courtyard. She had no authority, no soldiers, no money. All she had was the memory of her father and one wrong stroke on a false confession. The next morning, Lu Shao, chief minister of the Court of Judicial Review, came to question her. He was a man in his 40s, thin-faced, with a short beard and a string of sandalwood beads always in his hand. Unlike officials who enjoyed threats, Lu Shao spoke gently. He even ordered a jailer to bring her a bowl of hot porridge. But Jingji knew that such people were more dangerous. A man who could smile in a prison had usually watched others lose their lives without blinking. "Miss Lin," he said, "I will not ask whether you have been wronged. In court, injustice is not rare. I will only ask whether you wish to live." Jingji raised her eyes. "To live, must I confess?" "To live, you must understand where you are." Lu Shao placed the sandalwood beads on the table. "Your father kept the Chang'an storehouse ledgers for 3 years. With so much relief grain missing, someone must answer for it, or the court cannot rest. A man who is gone is the best choice, because he cannot argue. Yet you insist on making him argue. That is troublesome." Jingji heard what he had not denied. Someone wanted her father to be the offering that ended the matter. Lu Shao's concern was only that she had ruined a neat conclusion, so she asked, "If I disappear inside this prison, will the case be settled?" Lu Shao looked at her for a long time. "Not necessarily. Last night you spoke in front of too many people. By this morning all Chang'an knows that Lin Huaijin's daughter tore through the confession at the left chancellor's residence. Some will call you unfilial, some will call you mad, but some will grow curious. Curiosity is frightening. It makes people dig through dirt in search of bones." He stood and approached the bars. "So someone wants you to live a few more days. Live long enough to be judged properly. Live long enough for everyone to see you lose. Only then will your ending be useful to order." Jingji said nothing. In her mind, her father sat under a lamp, turning page after page of accounts, murmuring county names, measures of grain, dates of transport. He was not a weak man. If he had known he was being framed, he would have left something behind. But the Lin residence had been sealed. Her mother was under guard. She was in prison. Every path outward had been blocked. That afternoon, a female jailer secretly pressed a scrap of cloth into her hand. On it were only 4 words: Eastern Market, Tea House. The handwriting did not belong to anyone in the Lin family. Jingji stared at the cloth for a long time, then hid it in the hem of her robe. Night fell. Outside she heard guards changing shifts, keys knocking together, and someone coughing 3 times. A faint smell of smoke slipped through the crack in the door. The guard outside collapsed as if asleep. A shadow appeared beyond the bars. The person wore black and a wide-brimmed hat. His voice was younger than Jingji expected. "Miss Lin, can you walk?" She asked at once, "Who sent you?" "Someone who does not want you to be lost for nothing." "I do not leave with a hidden face." The person paused, then laughed softly. He removed his hat, revealing a delicate yet pale face and long eyes with the lazy look of a young lord accustomed to avoiding work. "I am Shen Yi, Vice Minister of the Court of Judicial Review. More precisely, I am the man Lu Shao dislikes because I ask too many questions." Jingji had heard the name. Shen Yi was the second son of the Shen family, a scholarly house in decline. He had passed the highest examination at 16, but because of his unruly temper, he had never been heavily used. Some called him a genius, others called him a disaster. Jingji believed in neither geniuses nor disasters. She believed only that people who appeared at night always had a purpose. "You want me to use you against Lu Shao?"
she asked. Shen Yi lifted an eyebrow. When you say it so directly, I feel a little hurt, but yes, I need you, and you need me to open the door. Once I leave, I will be hunted. No, I will take you out with a false transfer order. Before dawn, you must reach the eastern market and find a tea seller named Granny Qin. Your father once left something with her. If you find it, you may live. If not, by tomorrow morning, you will be nothing more than a runaway female prisoner. The cell door opened. Jingji stepped out, her legs numb from sitting so long. She knew this could be another trap, yet a trap and a road to life sometimes differed only in whether the person walking into it remained awake. She looked back at the dark cell and said, "Lord Shen, if you deceive me, I will drag you down with me." Shen Yi smiled. "Excellent. I have never enjoyed standing safely on shore alone."
Chapter 3. Lanterns of the Shi Residence. Chang'an at daybreak possessed a cold beauty. Mist still covered Vermilion Bird Avenue, and the wheels of the city patrol rolled across the blue stones with a dry, hollow sound. Shen Yi smuggled Jingji out of the Court of Judicial Review in a cart used for old case files. She lay among bundles of bamboo slips and rotting papers, covered by the cloak of a petty runner. Several times the cart was stopped. Shen Yi merely coughed, showed his token, and complained about backlogged paperwork. The gate guards grew tired of his rambling before he was halfway through and waved him on. Jingji lay still, understanding for the first time that some people used weakness as a disguise more easily than others used armor. The eastern market was already stirring. Steam rose from breakfast stalls. Fishmongers poured water over wooden boards. Merchants lifted shutters while pretending not to notice the wanted notices pasted at the corner of the lane. The portrait on the notices did not look much like Jingji. The painter had made her eyes too fierce and her face too thin. Still, the words "Lin family criminal daughter" were enough for people to avoid the paper as if it carried bad luck. The tea house mentioned on the cloth sat at the end of a narrow alley. Its signboard had lost half its paint, and the bamboo curtains were old. A stooped woman sat by the stove, boiling water. Her hair was white, but her eyes were sharp. When Jingji entered, the woman did not look up. She only said, "A bowl of tea costs 3 coins. A life costs more." Jingji placed the scrap of cloth on the table. "Granny Qin?" The old woman finally raised her head. Her gaze stayed on Jingji's face for a long while, as if she were searching another face through hers. Then she sighed. "You look like your father when he was young, stubborn enough to be foolish." Shen Yi leaned against the door and smiled. "Granny, you never praise anyone gently. And you never do honest work." Granny Qin poured 2 cups of tea. "The item Lin Huaijin left is not here. He was more careful than that. 3 years ago, when he first found irregularities in the Chang'an accounts, he came to me and said that if one day the Lin family fell, his daughter might come. I thought he was thinking too far. It turns out he did not think far enough." Jingji's fingers tightened around the cup. What did he leave? A key and half a sheet of paper. Granny Qin lifted a brick from beneath the stove and took out a bamboo tube wrapped in oilcloth. "But listen carefully. Once you take this, you will not be able to say you did not know." Jingji opened the tube. Inside was a small bronze key and a paper strip. On it, her father's handwriting had written only one line. "The lanterns hide the accounts. The truth is inside the 7th red glow." Shen Yi frowned. "Lanterns? 7th red glow?" Jingji closed her eyes. Memories rushed up. During last night's banquet at the Shi residence, 36 red lanterns hung under the eaves. The 7th lantern from the west side had a broken tassel. When she was dragged across the courtyard, she had noticed it for one breath. At the time, she thought it meaningless. Now she understood. Her father had hidden the clue inside the left chancellor's residence. "We must go back to the Shi residence," she said. Shen Yi nearly choked on his tea. "Miss Lin, you were taken from there last night like a storm sweeping away a roof tile, and now you want to walk back in?" "My father would not have pointed me there unless the item was important." Granny Qin looked at her. "Important, yes, but not necessarily enough to save you. Your father trusted Xie Yuan once. Later, he regretted it." Jingji's gaze darkened. "So Xie Yuan is involved." "In court, involvement is like dye in water. Once it spreads, who can tell where the color began?" Granny Qin lowered her voice.
My daughter used to serve as a maid in the Shay residence. She saw silver chests entering through the rear gate on a rainy night. 3 days later, she was sent out sick. Half a month later, she was gone. I have kept this tea house open only to wait for an explanation." The old woman's voice was calm, but the hand holding the teapot trembled slightly. Jingji suddenly understood why her father had trusted her. In Chang'an, the people crushed beneath power might not understand court politics, but they remembered every footstep that had stepped on them. That evening, under Granny Qin's arrangement, Jingji changed into a maid's clothes and entered the Shay residence with a group delivering pastries. Shan Yi did not go with her. He had to draw Lu Shao's attention elsewhere. Before parting, he pushed a tiny dagger and a false key into her hand. "Use the dagger only if you cannot talk your way out. Use the key only if you cannot run. As for talking, you are better than me." Jingji asked, "What are you going to do?" "Something very important," Shen Yi answered seriously. "I will make Lu Shao believe I am about to surrender and confess everything." "Will he believe you?" "He will. People like him always believe others are weaker than themselves." The Shay residence was preparing another banquet. Officials from Chang'an had entered the capital, and Shay Yuan was receiving them in secret. Jingji lowered her head and carried a tray through corridors lit with red lanterns. Every step was like walking across a blade. She saw the courtyard where she had been forced to stand the previous night. Rain marks still stained the stone. The torn confession had been removed, but she could still feel the moment her brush had cut across the page. The 7th lantern hung before the side hall. Jingji pretended to adjust its wick and touch the frame. Hidden behind the wooden bar was a thin piece of copper. On it engraved a small map: rear bamboo garden, storeroom, 3rd desk, 7th chest. Her father had once said that accounts were not only written in books, sometimes they were hidden in the way a person arranged a room. Back then she had only laughed. Later he forced her to learn the sound of an abacus, the smell of old paper, and the gait of a liar. Those things were saving her life now. The Shay residence storeroom stood behind the bamboo garden. It had 2 locks and 4 guards. Jingji could not force her way in. She waited until the banquet began, then deliberately spilled a tea tray near the corridor. The steward angrily ordered her to take a guest's stained robe to the back for changing. On her way, she heard 2 Chang'an attendants whispering. "Has that ledger been burned?" one asked, and the other answered, "The chancellor said not yet. We still have to see whom the Eastern Palace wants to keep and whom it wants to abandon."
Jingji paused for half a breath, then continued walking. The Eastern Palace, the Crown Prince. The case did not end with Shi Yuan. Her father had touched the nerves of the whole court. Night fell, and the lanterns of the Shi residence glowed as if it were a festival. Jingji slipped through the bamboo garden toward the storeroom. She had not yet taken out the false key Shen Yi had given her when a voice sounded behind her. "Miss Lin, you truly are courageous." She spun around. Shi Yuan stood beneath the bamboo shadows, dressed in plain black robes and without a single guard beside him. Lantern light crossed half his face, making his faint smile seem almost without warmth. But courage is not always a virtue. Sometimes it is only a prettier way to lose your life. Jingji placed one hand inside her sleeve, where Granny Qin's small dagger was hidden. "Were you waiting for me, Chancellor?" "I was waiting for the person behind you." "A pity. I'm alone." Shi Yuan looked at her, his gaze passing over the maid's clothes, the mud on her shoes, and the rope marks still left on her hands. "No. A girl who lost her father yesterday cannot leave prison, reach the Eastern Market, and enter the Shi residence in a single day unless someone opened roads for her. I want to know who." Jingji suddenly laughed. "The left chancellor holds power over the entire court, yet he fears a hidden person?" Shi Yuan's smile vanished. He advanced one step. At the same time, a small explosion sounded in the distance. Smoke rose from one corner of the kitchen, and maids began shouting. The guards around the storeroom scattered. Jingji knew it was Shen Yi's signal. Without hesitation, she threw the teacup in her hand at a lantern. Oil splashed across the floor, and flames flared between her and Shi Yuan. In the chaos, Jingji rushed to the storeroom door and opened the first lock with the false key. The second lock did not fit. Behind her, Shi Yuan had already circled the flames. She gritted her teeth, pulled the silver hairpin from her hair, and remembered what her father had once said while opening an old box at home. A lock, like a human heart, must be listened to from within. A tiny click sounded. The door opened a crack. She slipped into the dark just before Shi Yuan's hand could touch her shoulder. Chapter 4. The Ink Stain on the Desk. The storeroom of the Xie residence did not look like a place for treasure. It looked like a room built to keep secrets. Black wooden chests lined both walls, each sealed with papers from different government offices. Some bore the mark of the Ministry of Revenue, some named the Chang'an transport storehouses, some had only numbers. The smell of camphor and old paper made Jingji's chest tighten. Outside came running footsteps, Xie Yuan's orders to put out the fire, and the hiss of swords leaving their sheaths. She had only a few breaths. The paper her father left mentioned a lantern and the number 7. Jingji passed the chests quickly, searching for a discreet 7. At last she found a low chest under a desk. It had no official seal. Instead, red cord tied it with a bureaucrat's knot. It was the same knot her father used for private case files. It looked dead from the outside, but if the right thread was pulled, it would open. She knelt, her hands trembling with urgency, and pulled the 3rd thread. The red cord came loose. There was no gold or silver inside the chest, only a goatskin ledger, several letters, and half of a broken jade pendant. Jingji opened the ledger. On the first page were 4 words, True Record of Chang'an. Beneath them was her father's handwriting, listing each shipment of grain, each transfer date, each official signature, each number that had been altered. She read so quickly her eyes burned. The more she read, the colder her hands became. The relief silver had not vanished in one theft. It had been skimmed layer by layer through merchant guilds, transport offices, local officials, and finally turned into gifts that flowed back to the capital. The first letter was a plea from a Chang'an prefect saying the hungry had begun eating tree bark. The second was an unsent note from her father, perhaps meant for her. He wrote that if something happened to him, she must not trust anyone in court too quickly, and she must not think Xie Yuan was the final point. The one holding the blade may not be the one who wants the cut. The one watching in silence is the one you must study. Jingji was about to hide the ledger inside her robe when the storeroom door flew open. Xie Yuan stood outside, red firelight behind him. He looked at the ledger in her hands. His expression was not surprised, only tired, as if he were seeing a chess piece step into the wrong square. "Give it to me. So you can burn it? So you can live." Jingji hugged the ledger to her chest. "My father lost his life because of this." "Your father lost his life because he believed truth has strength by itself." Xie Yuan stepped in and closed the door behind him, cutting off the noise outside. "Truth has no strength unless someone powerful enough holds it. If you carry that ledger out, you will not survive 1 double hour. The one helping you will not survive either. Your mother, Granny Qin in the Eastern Market, everyone who has heard you speak, all of them may be taken down." She stared at him. "Are you threatening me, Chancellor?" "I am telling you what Lin Huaijin had no time to teach you." The words cut like a knife. Jingji wanted to rush at him, but she forced herself to stand still. If anger could accomplish anything, her father would not have fallen in his study. She asked, "Then teach me, who is behind this?" Xie Yuan was silent. In the storeroom, firelight slipped through cracks in the boards, trembling in strips. After a while, he said, "You do not have the standing to ask."
I have the ledger. You have something that can get you erased. Then what do you have? Xie Yuan looked at her for longer. Perhaps few people had ever dared question him in that tone. At last he answered, "I have time." The moment he finished, a noise came from the roof at the back of the storeroom. Shen Yi dropped through the ventilation opening, dust covering his hair and a bundle of smoke crackers in his hand. "Forgive me, I did not mean to overhear the part where your excellency frightened a young woman, but it seems your time is running short." Xie Yuan's face did not change. "Shen Yi, so you are indeed the rat in the Court of Judicial Review." Shen Yi brushed off his robe. "Being a rat has advantages. A rat knows which tunnels lead out. Those who sit too high may not." Jingji did not waste the chance. She knocked a chest of papers toward the lantern, while Shen Yi lit the smoke crackers. Thick white smoke filled the storeroom, stinging their eyes. Xie Yuan drew his sword, but Shen Yi had already pulled Jingji through a gap behind the shelf. The Xie residence had an old drainage passage to the Imperial River. Jingji crawled through darkness with the ledger in her arms, scraping her knees and striking her back on stone, but she did not make a sound. When they emerged by the canal, dawn was near. The Xie residence remained in commotion behind them. Shen Yi lay on the grass, panting, while Jingji opened the ledger again under the pale light. The final page held no numbers. It contained only an ink blot shaped like a plum blossom.
She had seen that mark on her father's desk on the day he was found, and she had also seen it on a memorial bearing the seal of the Eastern Palace. Shang'an tilted his head. "What did you discover?" Jingji closed the ledger. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes were bright as a freshly sharpened blade. "The person who wanted my father silenced was not Xie Yuan. Then who was it?" She looked toward the imperial city, where the sun was rising behind golden roofs. "The Crown Prince."
Chapter 5. The Night Trial in the Inner Palace. News that the Xie residence storeroom had burned spread through Chang'an faster than smoke. Xie Yuan sealed the residence and claimed the fire began from carelessness in the rear kitchen, but people in Chang'an lived on rumors. Within a day, the story had taken every shape. The criminal daughter of the Lin family had returned like a vengeful ghost, the vice minister of the Court of Judicial Review had abducted a prisoner, the left chancellor hid silver beneath his house, or the Eastern Palace had sent men to silence witnesses. The more speech was forbidden, the more people whispered. The more they whispered, the more the rumors resembled truth. Jingxi and Shen Yi hid in an abandoned warehouse beside Yong'an Wharf. The one protecting them was someone no one expected, Chang'an, daughter of Grand Tutor Cheng and nominal fiancé of the Crown Prince. Chang'an arrived at dusk, dressed in men's clothing, a bamboo fan in her hand. She possessed the refined beauty of a noble young lady, but her eyes were sharper than the edge of the fan. When she saw Jingxi, her first words were not comfort. "You have startled the snake. Now you must make sure your stick is long enough." Jingxi asked, "Why would Miss Cheng help me?" "Because I do not wish to marry a man who uses relief grain as a step towards the throne." Chang'an opened her fan, hiding half her face. "And because your father once saved mine in a salt tax case. The Cheng family owes him a life." The ledger was spread across the table. Shen Yi used charcoal powder to raise erased words. Chang'an compared official names with the list of Eastern Palace disciples. Jingxi read the numbers. The three of them worked all night. The more they read, the clearer the picture became. Relief silver had been diverted to build a private force in Chang'an under the name of transport guards. The final command bore no name, only a secondary seal shaped like a plum blossom. The plum blossom was the emblem of consort Shen, the Crown Prince's birth mother. "The Crown Prince did not merely take silver, he raised soldiers," Shen Yi said, his voice serious for once. Chang'an folded her fan. "If we send this ledger directly to His Majesty, we will be the first to vanish. The Emperor has been ill for a long time. Most affairs pass through the left chancellor and the Eastern Palace. A memorial may turn to ash before it reaches the dragon desk." Jingxi looked at the candle flame. "Then we must send it somewhere no one dares block." "Where?" "The Inner Palace." Shen Yi frowned. The Inner Palace was where the Empress Dowager lived after withdrawing from court affairs. She had not interfered in government for 10 years, but she remained the only person in the palace whose authority made both Xie Yuan and the Crown Prince cautious. The problem was that the Inner Palace was tightly guarded, received no strangers, and certainly would not receive a female prisoner who had escaped custody. 3 days later, Jingxi stepped through the palace gate in a pale green maid's robe. Vermilion walls rose so high they seemed to swallow the sky. Since childhood, she had heard people say the imperial palace was the most brilliant place under heaven. Walking through it, she felt only cold, the cold of stone, rules, and eyes that watched one another without ever speaking truth. The blessing ceremony took place in Xining Hall. The Empress Dowager sat behind a pearl curtain, her voice aged but not weak. The noblewomen knelt one after another. Jingxi stood behind Chang'an with copied pages of the most important parts of the ledger hidden in her sleeve. The real ledger had been hidden elsewhere. She could not bring it all into the palace. When the incense bell rang, Chang'an deliberately dropped a powder box, drawing the palace maid's attention. Jingxi retreated 1 step and slipped along the left corridor. She had not gone far when a voice sounded behind her. "Whose maid are you that you know so little of palace rules?" Jingxi turned. Before her stood the Crown Prince Shao Jin, dressed in white brocade with a jade belt, his features gentle as a painted portrait. He studied her carefully, then smiled. "Lin Jingxi, you truly surprise me." Her heart struck hard, but her face did not change. "Your Highness has mistaken me for someone else." "No, on the night at the Xie residence, you took something you should not have taken. I thought Xie Yuan would handle it more neatly. It seems even powerful ministers grow old." Shao Jin stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Give me the ledger.
I can let your mother live peacefully in the countryside. You can change your name, leave the capital, and live as if none of this happened. And my father? Those who are gone need reputation. Those who live need a future. Miss Lin is clever. You should not choose wrongly." Jingji looked at that gentle face and suddenly understood why her father had been driven into a corner. A man like Xiao Jin did not need anger. He could speak of silencing people in the same tone used to discuss the weather. She slowly lowered her head, as though persuaded, and slid her hand into her sleeve. Xiao Jin's smile widened. But what she drew out was not the ledger. It was Shen Yi's small bronze whistle. Its shrill cry tore through the quiet corridor. At the same time, Chang'an knelt before the pearl curtain in the main hall and raised her voice. "Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager, this subject's daughter has a grievance concerning the Chang'an relief silver and begs your Majesty to examine it." Xining Hall shook with alarm. Xiao Jin's expression changed. He reached out to cover Jingji's mouth. She stepped back and deliberately struck a porcelain vase. The crash rang out. Palace maids, eunuchs, and guards rushed over. Jingji knelt among the broken porcelain, lifted the copied ledger pages high, and spoke so clearly that even the pearl curtain trembled. "This common woman, Lin Jingji, daughter of the accused Lin Huaijin, stakes her life to accuse the Eastern Palace of embezzling relief silver, raising private troops in Chang'an, and causing loyal officials to be wronged." Silence fell like snow. Behind the pearl curtain, the Empress Dowager rose. The beads in her hand touched one another with the softest sound. "Bring her in."
Chapter 6. The Tea Cellar of the Eastern Market. The inner palace remained closed for 2 double hours. Outside Xining Hall, noblewomen were held in place, and officials who heard the news crowded the courtyard, none daring to speak loudly. The crown prince knelt on the stone steps, his face pale as jade, still keeping the calm of a man who knew he had not yet lost. Xie Yan also arrived, dressed in purple court robes. His eyes did not rest on Xiao Jin, but on the closed doors. He understood better than anyone. Once the Empress Dowager questioned the case herself, Chang'an could no longer be buried beneath a single confession. Inside, Jingji knelt on the cold floor. The Empress Dowager did not rush to read the copied pages. She asked how Jingji's father had been found, how the Lin residence was sealed, who had brought her to the Xie residence, and who had helped her enter the palace. Jingji answered carefully. She did not hide what had to be said, but she neither betrayed those who had saved her. When the Empress Dowager asked where Shen Yi was, she replied only, "That person believes the court still has a place where reason may be spoken." That long look followed Jingji out of the inner palace. The Empress Dowager issued an order to hold her temporarily inside the palace, while commanding the Court of Judicial Review to reseal the Chang'an files and wait for a joint inquiry by the 3 judicial offices. It was not yet victory, it was only a door cracked open. But the opening was enough to make the people behind the case tremble. That night, Granny Qin was gone. The news arrived while Jingji was being kept in a small room behind Xining Hall. The messenger was Shen Yi, who slipped in by pretending to be a eunuch delivering coal. He spoke very softly. The tea house in the Eastern Market had burned, and people found the old woman in the rear room. Before her final moment, she had left a wooden box with the water carrier near the Earth God Temple, instructing him to deliver it to the girl in mourning if anything happened to her. Jingji sat motionless. She had known someone might pay the price, but knowing and bearing it were 2 different things. Granny Qin had only been an old tea seller. She had lost a daughter and lived quietly for years to keep 1 bamboo tube for another person. Jingji had not even had time to light incense for that daughter before the old woman was drawn into the fire of the Lin family's case.
Shen Yi placed the wooden box on the table. "There is something inside you need to see." The box was unlocked. Inside were a scorched silver bracelet, a piece of cloth embroidered with the name Aru, and an old testimony. Aru was Granny Qin's daughter, once a maid in the Xi residence. Before she passed, she had written down what she saw. Silver chests from Chang'an were moved into the Xi residence, then half of them sent onward to the Eastern Palace Villa on Chang'an Mountain. The person receiving the chests was not Shi Yuan, but a trusted eunuch of Consort Xian. The testimony carried Aru's red handprint. More importantly, on the back was a list of the men who transported the chests that year. One name was circled in charcoal: Ma Gui, captain of the Zhenyuan escort agency. If Ma Gui was still alive, he could prove the route the silver had taken.
The Zenyuan escort agency dissolved 2 years ago. Ma Gui disappeared after the South City warehouse fire, but I found someone who looks like him working as a cart driver at Hangguang Wharf. Jingji folded the testimony. Her voice had gone hoarse. Get me out of the palace. You are under the Empress Dowager's protection. Going outside is like handing yourself over. If I stay here, Ma Gui will be gone before the joint inquiry begins. Shen Yi looked at her. He wanted to advise against it, but perhaps he understood that advice would be useless. A person who had seen an old tea seller pay the price for keeping faith could no longer sit behind palace walls and wait for someone else to bring justice. He sighed and took a small token from his sleeve. The north gate of the inner palace changes guards at midnight. I can open it only once. Jingji took the token. Shen Yi, why help me this far? He silenced for a moment, and the smile he usually wore faded. 3 years ago, your father exposed a false case at the Court of Judicial Review. The man he saved was my elder brother, but my brother still lost his life on the road to exile because the true mastermind was never brought down. I understood then that saving one person from a wrongful judgment is not enough. One must break the hand that creates such judgments. Outside the door, night wind passed through bronze bells. Jingji arose and tucked the testimony into her robe. She was no longer the girl in mourning dragged through the rain to the Shi residence. Each loss placed a heavier weight on her shoulders, yet that same weight made her back straighter. She knew she was being turned into a pawn in a game between Shi Yuan, the crown prince, the Empress Dowager, and countless hidden powers. But if a pawn reached the far end of the board, it could become something else.
Chapter 7. Hangguan Wharf. Hangguan Wharf was the place where Chang'an hid its ugliest face. By day, carts from the provinces crowded into the capital. Porters shouted until their throats cracked, and merchants bargained until their voices turned hoarse. By night, oil lamps flickered on black water, nameless boats docked in silence, and goods covered in rough cloth were carried away before dawn. In such a place, it was easy for a person to disappear. It was just as easy for a person to be silenced. Jingxi and Shen Yi arrived when the second night watch sounded. She wore a man's plain cloth robe, ash on her face, and her hair tied high. Shen Yi led her into a cheap wine shop where cart drivers gathered after work. He ordered a jar of wine and asked questions as casually as if he had nothing better to do. In less than half a double hour, he learned that Ma Gui now used the name Ma San, had a lame leg, and often slept in the hay shed behind the wharf. They found Ma San by a pile of rotten rope. The man was past 50, with a messy beard and a scar stretching from one side of his left eye. As soon as he heard Granny Quin's name, his face changed and he turned to run. Shen Yi chased him, but Ma San knew the paths despite his limp and slipped between rows of boats like a mudfish. Jingxi did not chase. She watched the direction he ran, took a shortcut across a wooden bridge, and blocked him at the mouth of a narrow alley. Ma San nearly crashed into her. She lifted Ah Ro's scorched silver bracelet. Granny Quin is gone. The man froze. His face twitched. His lips shook, but he said nothing. Jingxi continued. She kept her daughter's testimony for years. You have hidden long enough. I am not her father, Ma San rasped. I was only a driver. I know nothing. You know the Chang'an villa. He stepped back as if struck. Shen Yi had caught up behind him, but Jingxi signaled him not to press. She lowered her voice. Ma Gui, if you fear losing your life, I understand. But Ah Ro was lost because she saw what you transported. Granny Quin was lost because she kept the testimony. My father was lost because he wanted the truth to come out. You are still alive, not because you are innocent, but because you are the last piece of that dark road. Ma Gui collapsed onto the ground. After a long time, he began to cry. The crying of a man who had hidden too long did not sound like crying. It sounded like rotten wood breaking. He said that 3 years earlier, the Zenyuan escort agency had been hired to transport 18 chests of silver from Chang'an to the capital. On paper, the cargo was recorded as recovered salt tax, but the chests carried the marks of the relief storehouses. At the Shi residence, 6 chests were kept as false evidence, while the remaining 12 were moved that very night to the Eastern Palace Villa on Chang'an. Ah Ro saw the marks and secretly asked him about them. He told her to stay silent. She did not. A month later, she was gone.
I wanted to leave the capital, Ma Gui said, but the Eastern Palace's men came to the escort agency. The whole agency burned. I escaped by pretending to be gone too. I did not speak. I have a wife and children back home.
Shen Yi asked, "Do you have any proof besides your words?" Ma Gui wiped his tears and removed a piece of leather stitched inside his shoe. Hidden within was half a transport order bearing the plum blossom secondary seal and the signature of an Eastern Palace eunuch. I kept this in case they came for me, but keeping it only taught me how to live like a stray dog. Jingji took the order. Before she could speak, an arrow struck the wooden post beside her head. Lamps across the wharf went out one by one. Footsteps rushed from both ends of the alley. Shen Yi pulled her behind a stack of cargo and drew his short sword. Ma Gui panicked. "Eastern Palace! I knew it! I knew it!" The attackers wore gray and covered their faces. They did not shout. They had come to end all loose tongues. Shen Yi's sword was quick, but he alone could not hold back more than 10. Jingji dragged Ma Gui toward the wharf while shouting that there was fire. Drivers and merchants surged out in alarm, creating a confused crowd. The attackers did not dare strike wildly in front of so many people, but they continued to pursue. Just as the three were driven to the wharf's edge, a troop of riders appeared at the head of the wharf. Their leader wore black armor and carried the Empress Dowager's command token. It was Xie Yan. He looked at the chaos and ordered all the attackers seized. The Chancellor's guards moved with cold speed, and in a short time the wharf was under control. Jingji clutched the transport order and watched Xie Yan warily. "Did Your Excellency come to save people or to seize evidence?" Xie Yan dismounted. "If I wanted to seize it, you would not have reached the wharf alive." Shen Yi gave a faint laugh. "That sounds very trustworthy, especially from a man who kept evidence locked in his own residence." Xie Yan ignored him. He looked at Ma Gui, then at Jingji. "The joint inquiry opens in 2 days. Only if the witness survives until then will you have the standing to accuse the Eastern Palace. But from this moment on, the Crown Prince is not the only one who wants you gone." "Who else?" Xie Yun raised his head and looked toward the distant imperial city. "The one afraid the court would learn he has been blind for 3 years." Jingji understood. The emperor. A sick, suspicious sovereign who did not wish to admit that his own son had raised troops under his eyes. If the truth shook the throne might choose to silence the truth. The wind at Hanguang Wharf blew fiercely. Jingji gripped the transport order and for the first time saw that the road ahead did not lead only to revenge. It led straight into the heart of power. Chapter 8. The Drum Before Xuanzang Hall. 2 days before the inquiry, Chang'an felt like a bowstring drawn to its limit. The Empress Dowager issued an order. Xie Yuan sent soldiers to guard Ma Gui. The Court of Judicial Review sealed the files. The Eastern Palace shut its gates to all visitors. Yet the quieter the city became, the more uneasy the court grew. A corruption case could bring down a few officials. A case of private troops could change the heir to the throne. Everyone wanted to know which way the wind would blow before choosing where to stand. Jingji was taken back to the Court of Judicial Review, but this time not to a prison cell. She stayed in a small receiving room, guarded outside by both the Empress Dowager's men and Xie Yuan's men. Shen Yi said it was the safest arrangement because neither side trusted the other and therefore neither could easily act. Jingji smiled, thinking the court was indeed a strange place. Sometimes suspicion protected the weak better than kindness. On the night before the inquiry, her mother was brought to her. Madame Lin had grown much thinner and new strands of white had appeared in her hair. Yet when she saw Jingji, she did not cry. She only embraced her for a long time, stroking her daughter's back as she had when Jingji was small. "Your father would scold you for being reckless, but he would also be proud." Jingji rested her head on her mother's shoulder. Until then, she had forced herself to remain hard, but in her mother's arms, she was again the child who had once feared thunder on rainy nights. "I am afraid," she whispered. It is good to know fear. Those who do not fear can easily become cruel. Those who fear and still do what must be done are the people of the Lin family. The next morning, the drums before Xuanzang Hall sounded 3 times. The inquiry by the 3 judicial offices should have taken place at the Court of Judicial Review, but the Empress Dowager requested that it be held in the front hall so all officials could witness it. The emperor did not appear, citing grave illness, but a golden curtain was lowered behind the dragon desk, meaning that every word spoken could reach the inner chamber.
Crown Prince Shao Jin stood on the right in full court dress, his face composed. Xie Yuan stood on the left. The Empress Dowager sat behind a pearl curtain to the east. Jingji knelt in the middle of the hall, before a cold stone path leading to an empty throne. Lu Shao presided. First, he read the old charge. Lin Huaijin had embezzled relief silver, ended his own life out of guilt, and his daughter had escaped custody to cause disorder. His voice was flat, each sentence like a nail driven into wood. Then Shen Yi stepped forward and presented the true record of Chang'an, A Rou's testimony, Ma Gui's transport order, and the list of involved officials. Xuanzang Hall stirred. Some officials went pale, others knelt and cried that they had been framed. Shao Jin's expression did not change. He only asked, "A ledger taken from an unclear source? A witness who once worked in a criminal escort agency? And the testimony of a person who is no longer here? You wish to convict the Eastern Palace with only these? Is that not absurd?" Jingji raised her head. "Your Highness is right. These are not enough." The whole hall looked at her. Shao Jin narrowed his eyes. Jingji continued, "Therefore, this common woman asks to call the second witness." The hall doors opened. An old eunuch was helped inside, his face full of wrinkles and his legs unsteady. Shao Jin's expression finally shifted. The man was Gao Ping, who had once served Consort Xian and been expelled from the palace 2 years earlier due to illness. Shan Yi had found him in a Taoist temple outside the city by following a clue on the transport order. Gao Ping knelt and presented a small box. Inside was the real plum blossom secondary seal. The old eunuch's voice trembled. "That year when Her Highness Consort Xian was seriously ill, His Highness the Crown Prince borrowed the secondary seal to handle private affairs. This servant once stamped transport orders for the Chang'an silver. Later, when I learned it was relief silver, I was so frightened that I secretly kept the seal and pretended to be ill so I could leave the palace. I beg the Empress Dowager and all honored ministers to examine this clearly." Shao Jin's voice turned cold. A confused old servant dare accuse the Crown Prince? Gao Ping struck his forehead to the floor until red marks appeared. This servant would not dare, but this servant also kept the usage register. Every time the seal was used, Consort Xian ordered a record kept to prevent abuse. The register is in the box. The register was presented. Lu Shao opened it, and his hand stopped. The dates of the seal's use matched the transport dates in the true record of Chang'an. Murmurs rose in the hall like waves. Jingji looked at Shao Jin. He looked back at her. In that instant, the gentleness on his face cracked, revealing the coldness beneath, but he had not yet lost. He knelt toward the golden curtain behind the dragon desk. "Imperial Father, this son has been plotted against by traitors. Lin Huaijin embezzled silver and took the blame in fear. His daughter has colluded with Shen Yi and Xie Yuan, even coercing my mother's former servant to slander the Eastern Palace. I beg Imperial Father to see with sacred clarity." The golden curtain remained silent. Everyone held their breath. After a while, heavy coughing sounded behind it. Then the Emperor's hoarse voice came. "Lin Jingji?" Jingji bowed her head. "This common woman is here. Do you want us to depose the Crown Prince with a few papers?" She felt pressure from the dragon desk descend like a mountain, but she remembered Granny Qin, A Rou, her father, and the starving people of Chang'an. She answered, "This common woman does not ask your majesty to depose anyone. I only beg your majesty to look at the grain that never reached the people, the silver turned to weapons, and the lives lost because of silence. If those are still only a few papers, then the lives of great Yu's people are also only a few papers." Xuanzang Hall fell still. Those words came close to a fence against the throne. Xie Yuan looked at her, and for the first time there was a flicker of disturbance in his eyes. Behind the pearl curtain, the Empress Dowager sighed softly. The Emperor remained silent so long that Jingji thought she might be dragged out before the hall. At last, the sound of the Imperial Yu seal being placed on the desk rang out. The Emperor said, "Confine the Crown Prince within the Eastern Palace, pending investigation. Restore Lin Huaijin's honorable status for the time being, and allow proper burial. All persons connected to the Chang'an case, regardless of rank, are to be arrested." The drums outside the hall sounded again. Jingji bowed until her forehead touched the stone floor. She knew this was not the end. Xiao Jin was confined, but the roots that had sunk deep into the court would not pull themselves out, and the man behind the golden curtain, the one who had just chosen to investigate his own son, had also remembered her face.
Chapter 9. The Crimson Letter on Chang'an Mountain. After the inquiry, Chang'an seemed to have changed skies. Chang'an officials were arrested in groups. Treasuries were sealed. The Eastern Palace was surrounded by imperial guards. Common people burned incense before the Lin residence and called Lin Huaijin an upright official. The same mouths that had cursed Jingji as unfilial now praised her courage. She did not feel joy. The world turned with the wind too quickly. Yesterday it could throw stones. Today it could offer flowers. Tomorrow, if power changed faces, it could throw stones again. Her father was given a proper burial in the cemetery south of the city. On the day of the funeral, the rain stopped. Madame Lin wore white and walked very slowly. Jingji held the spirit tablet and did not cry. She had cried on the night Granny Qin was lost, cried when her mother held her, cried inwardly each time she reread her father's words. Before the grave, she only placed the ledger with burned edges down and whispered, "Father, I brought it into the light." But light did not last. 3 days later, Ma Gui was attacked inside his guarded quarters. He survived, but poison left him unconscious. That same night, Gao Ping was found hanging in the guardroom, leaving behind a confession saying Jingji had bribed him. The handwriting was his, but Shen Yi discovered that his wrist had been injured before he wrote it. Someone had forced him. Jingji immediately understood. The Eastern Palace faction was striking back. Xiao Jin was confined, but had not yet been deposed. If the witnesses fell and the testimony turned, the emperor could claim the case was unclear and preserve the crown prince. The court did not fear truth. The court feared truth it could not control. The final clue lay at the Chang'an Mountain Villa, where the 12 chests of silver had been sent. Xie Yuan proposed sending troops to search, but the emperor hesitated, saying they must avoid alarming civilians and damaging imperial dignity. The Empress Dowager was furious, but she could not overrule an imperial command. Jingji knew that waiting for an order meant losing the evidence. That night, she went to find Xie Yuan. The Xie residence had been repaired after the fire, but the bamboo gardens still smelled faintly of smoke. Xie Yuan received her in his study. A half-finished chessboard lay on the desk. He was not surprised to see her. "You want to go to Chang'an?" "I need someone who knows the road into the villa." "Why do you think I know it?" "Because your excellency kept 6 chests in your own residence. A man like you would never let the other half stay entirely out of your sight." Xie Yuan put down a chess piece. "Lin Huaijin taught you to read people well." Jingji looked directly at him. "My father also taught me that a clever man who stays silent before evil is not innocent." The air froze. Shen Yi, standing beside her, almost coughed. Xie Yuan did not grow angry. He merely looked at the chessboard and said, "That year, I knew there was something wrong with the Chang'an silver. I kept 6 chests because I wanted evidence to restrain the Eastern Palace, but I did not know Lin Huaijin would be silenced so quickly." "And after you knew," Jingji asked, "you still let my father carry the name of a corrupt official?" "Jingji," Xie Yuan said for the first time without using her surname. "In court, there are matters that cannot be met with hot blood. I was waiting for the right moment. My father could not wait. Granny Qin could not wait. Aru could not wait. The people of Chang'an could not wait." Xie Yuan closed his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, he seemed much older. "Correct. That is why this time I will go with you." The group left the capital that night. Jingji, Shen Yi, Xie Yuan, and 10 personal guards. Winter mist lay thick on Chang'an Mountain, and the stone path was slick. The Eastern Palace Villa stood behind a pine forest, disguised by a signboard naming it an abandoned Taoist temple. When they arrived, flames were already rising. Red fire licked the wooden roofs, while black-clad men moved chests onto carts. Xie Yuan ordered an attack. His guards charged in. Jingji and Shen Yi circled to the rear to search for an underground storehouse. In the main hall, she noticed a newly built wall. Shen Yi knocked and found it hollow. Together they broke through. Behind it was a staircase leading down. The underground chamber no longer held silver. Only chest marks remained on the floor, with scraps of oiled cloth and the smell of rusted iron. Jingji thought they had come too late. Then, in a corner of the chamber, she saw a dried red trail leading behind a water jar. Behind the jar was a young soldier near his last breath, wearing armor marked with the private troops of Chang'an. He had been left behind after being struck by an arrow. When he saw Jingqi, he gripped her hand and pushed a piece of silk into it, written in red. "The Crown Prince is not the final master," he whispered. Jingqi bent close. "Who is it?" "His The soldier's voice stopped before the words were complete. The silk held only broken phrases. Silver entered the inner treasury. Order from Qianyuan. Qianyuan was the emperor's palace. Jingqi felt the blood in her body turn cold. If this was true, the Chang'an case was not only about the crown prince raising troops. The emperor had also used part of the relief silver to fill an empty inner treasury drained by war in the north. The crown prince was greedy, but the throne was not clean either. Shen Yi read it and went pale. This cannot be brought out carelessly. Xie Yuan descended into the chamber and looked at the silk. For the first time, the left chancellor, whose power overshadowed the court, fell silent, like a man forced to the edge of a cliff. Outside, the villa burned. Jingqi stood between fire and darkness and suddenly understood why her father had to fall. Not because he had touched the crown prince, because he had touched the greatest lie of Great Yu, that imperial power stood above guilt.
Chapter 10. The Emperor's Game. Upon returning to Chang'an, Xie Yuan entered the palace at once. Jingji was not allowed to go with him. He kept the crimson silk, claiming that leaving it in her hands would be too dangerous. Shen Yi was so furious he struck the table, but Jingji was not surprised. Xie Yuan had chosen to act, yet he was still the left chancellor. People like him always believed they could place truth upon a chessboard and move it step by step for the good of the realm. The problem was that the people placed on that board were rarely asked whether they wished to be pieces. For the next 3 days, the imperial city remained sealed. Xie Yuan did not leave his residence. The Empress Dowager announced illness. The Eastern Palace was still surrounded, yet no decree deposing the crown prince came down. Among the people, the rumors began to turn. Jingji had colluded with powerful ministers. Xie Yuan wanted to use the case to pressure the emperor. Shen Yi was a rebel. Anonymous papers appeared in the markets, all in the same handwriting, the ink still new. Jingji picked one up and smiled coldly. When power cannot strike at once, it stains the name first. On the 4th night, she received an unsigned letter. "If you want to save your mother, come alone to Qinglong Temple." Madame Lin had indeed disappeared from the Lin residence. Jingji did not tell Shen Yi. She knew it was a trap, but she also knew the trap setter did not want her lost immediately. They wanted what she had, or they wanted to use her to force someone else. She hid inside her robe a copy of the most important pages of the true record of Chang'an and went. Qinglong Temple stood at the edge of the city, abandoned for years. Inside the hall, only a faded deity statue remained. The person waiting for her was not an assassin, but Xiao Jin. The crown prince wore plain robes, no longer shining in court dress, yet his gentle smile remained. Beside him, Madame Lin was bound and gagged, but her eyes looked calmly at her daughter. "Miss Lin," Xiao Jin said, "we have both been used." Jingji stood 10 steps away. "Your Highness says something new. You think I am the mastermind, but you saw the letter from Chang'an, did you not? The silver entered the inner treasury. The command came from Chanyuan. Imperial father lacked money for the northern armies. The left chancellor wanted to hold the court together. My mother wanted to protect me. Everyone took a part. I am only the one pushed forward to bear the blame when the matter breaks open. So the people of Chang'an should have paid. My father should have paid. Ah Ro, Granny Quinn, Gao Ping, all of them should have paid." Xiao Jin sighed, as if truly regretful. No one should have. But the realm moves on sacrifice. Lin Huaijin did not understand that. Neither do you. If this case pulls down the emperor, the border armies will become unsettled, the princes will rise, and the tribes beyond the frontier will seize their chance to move south. Then the people lost will not be limited to Chang'an. Jingji looked at him. "Your Highness uses the realm as a cloak for your guilt. Does it not feel heavy?" Xiao Jin's smile faded. "You are very much like your father. A pity people like that seldom live long. Hand over the copy of the true record of Chang'an. I will release your mother, then leave Chang'an. I can promise that when I ascend the throne, I will honor Lin Huaijin, send relief to Chang'an, and punish a few scapegoats. That ending is better than dragging the whole court into mud."
Jingji looked at her mother. Madame Lin shook her head very slightly. Jingji understood. The Lin family could lose their lives, but they could not trade silence for a handsome memorial stone. She took the copied pages from her robe and held them up.
Xiao Jin reached out, but the moment he stepped forward, she threw the papers into the burning incense burner. Flames rose and swallowed the pages. Xiao Jin's expression changed. He rushed forward and seized her by the throat. "Are you mad?" Pressed back against a pillar, Jingji could barely breathe, yet she still smiled. "If your highness knew about one copy, how could it be the only one?" The temple doors burst open. Shen Yi, Chang'an, and the Empress Dowager's guards rushed in. Xiao Jin drew a dagger and held it at Jingji's neck. Then, from behind the deity statue, a figure stepped out and made everyone freeze. Emperor Xiao Yan. He wore a black cloak, his sickly face pale, but his eyes were still sharp. Shi Yan followed him, holding the crimson silk. Jingji understood. Shi Yan had used her as bait to draw Xiao Jin out of the eastern palace and force the emperor to hear his son with his own ears. She should have been angry, yet in that moment she no longer had the strength. She only looked at the king before her, the man who may have approved the use of relief silver, the man who could decide how history would remember the case. The emperor looked at Xiao Jin. "Do you want the throne so badly?" Xiao Jin laughed, the dagger still near Jingji. "Imperial father asks me. The inner treasury was empty, and you told me to find a way. Jingnan silver entered the palace, and you did not ask where it came from. Now that the matter has been exposed, you wish to become a wise ruler and push your son forward to pay. Under this sky, who is cleaner than whom?" The words struck the ruined temple like thunder. The emperor began coughing violently. Shi Yan moved to support him, but he pushed him away. "Seize this unfilial son." Xiao Jin pulled Jingji backward, but Chang'an unexpectedly stepped forward, her voice calm. "Your Highness, if you hurt her, the words you just spoke will be spread through Chang'an before dawn. I have had them copied and placed in 12 locations. You have no road left." Xiao Jin looked at his former fiancée, pain appearing on his face for the first time. "You betray me too?" Chang'an closed her eyes. "I simply do not wish to marry a throne built on bones." The dagger in Xiao Jin's hand trembled. Shen Yi seized the instant and threw his sword, knocking the dagger away. Guards rushed forward and restrained Xiao Jin. Jingji fell to the floor, coughing. Madame Lin was untied and held her tightly. The emperor stood in the temple, old and alone. No one there had won completely. Only the truth, after being dragged through rain, fire, and fear, had finally stood before the one who had to hear it.
Chapter 11. The Day Snow Fell on Vermilion Bird Avenue. That winter, Chang'an saw its heaviest snow in 10 years. Snow covered the palace roofs, the eastern market, and the notices pasted on the city walls. Crown Prince Xiao Jin was deposed and confined to the imperial mausoleum. Consort Shen requested to enter the Cold Palace. More than 40 officials connected to the Chang'an case were tried, some exiled, some severely punished, some stripped of family property to replenish the relief funds. The edict issued, admitting that the emperor had failed to supervise appointments strictly, opened the granaries, and reduced taxes in Chang'an for 3 years. The edict was beautifully written, full of sorrow, but not one sentence admitted that silver had once entered the inner treasury. Jingji read the edict beneath the eaves of the Lin residence, which had been returned to her family. She knew this was the result Xie Yuan and the Empress Dowager had negotiated with the emperor. The court needed an ending large enough for the people to believe justice existed, but not so large that the throne collapsed. Xiao Jin bore the crimes of raising troops and taking relief silver. The emperor kept his dragon robe unstained with the phrase, unaware of the money's source. Xie Yuan said this was the price of preventing Great Yu from falling into chaos. She asked him, then for whom did the people of Chang'an suffer? Xie Yuan stood in the snowy courtyard, white flakes covering his cloak. For the greed of many. But the historians will write that they suffered because of the crown prince. Perhaps. Then truth has still been cut in half. Xie Yuan looked at her. Half a truth recorded is better than a whole truth buried with a realm in disarray. Jingji did not answer. She had once thought justice meant dragging every wrongdoing into the light. Now she had discovered that light also had limits. Palace walls, military power, and human fear cut it into pieces. She did not accept that, but she was no longer naive enough to believe that shouting loudly could make heaven and earth change color. After Lu Shao was dismissed and investigated, Shen Yi was promoted to a true position of authority within the Court of Judicial Review. In a snowy day, he came to the Lin residence with a jar of wine and several packets of hotcakes. He found Jingji sitting before her desk, copying the entire Chang'an case from memory and from the surviving ledger.
He set the cakes down and sighed. "What are you planning to do? Publish it? You just survived. Do not rush to seek danger again." "Not publish it, Mao." Jingji did not lift her head. "I am writing so I will not forget. One day, when people remember only the crown prince as the sole villain, there will be another version to tell them that guilt was not so simple." Shan Yi sat opposite her. "Do you know, I once thought I hated the court. After this case, I realized what I hate most is not the court, but the feeling of being forced to choose between truth and many people's lives." Jingji stopped writing. "What will you choose?" "I don't know yet." He smiled wearily. "Perhaps I will stay at the Court of Judicial Review and try to reduce the number of people wronged. It sounds very small, doesn't it?" "Not small." She looked at the snow outside. "My father also began by correcting one number in a storehouse account." Chang'an chose to leave the capital. Her engagement to the Eastern Palace had been cancelled, and her reputation was both praised and doubted. Some said she had acted with righteousness against the one closest to her. Others said she was cold-hearted toward her future husband. She did not care. Before traveling to Chang'an to supervise relief work with a group of women from official families, she came to say farewell to Jingji. The two young women sat in the study, drinking the kind of tea Granny Quinn had once sold, and were silent for a long while.
"I used to think I was born to become crown princess," Chang'an said. "Since childhood, I learned rights, learned silence, learned to smile when I did not want to smile. After this, I suddenly do not know who I am." Jingji poured more tea. "That is good. Not knowing means you may choose again." Chang'an laughed. "You speak more and more like your father." Jingji also smiled, though her eyes reddened. She walked Chang'an to the gate. Snow fell on both their cloaks. Chang'an entered her carriage, lifted the curtain, and said, "When you finish writing that version of the truth, send me a copy. Jiangnan should have someone read it." Jingji nodded. The carriage rolled away, leaving wheel tracks on the snow. She stood before the Lin gate and looked at the whitened vermilion bird avenue. Chang'an remained Chang'an, vast, beautiful, cruel, and always teaching people how to bow. But beneath the snow, she knew some seeds had been buried, seeds of questions, seeds of people who dared to say no. That night, Madame Lin placed an old wooden box before her. Inside was the brush her father had used for many years, and a sheet of paper he had written when she turned 10. A scholar does not read to defeat others with words, but to avoid being led away by lies. Jingji held the brush and finally broke into tears. She wept not only for her father, but for those whose names never appeared in the edict, for the half of truth still trapped in darkness, and for the girl she could no longer be after the rainy night at the Xie residence.
Chapter 12. Refusing to Bow. 3 months later, the spring review of cases reopened. The Court of Judicial Review set up a new petition room at the southern gate, allowing common people to submit grievances without passing through local offices. It was Shen Yi's proposal, backed by the Empress Dowager and reluctantly approved by Xie Yuan. Court officials called it childish, saying the common people understood nothing of law, and that opening such a door would only add disorder. Yet on the first day, more than 100 people lined up beneath the drizzle. They held papers, bamboo tablets, even spirit tablets of family members. Not because they were certain they would be saved, but because for the first time they had seen a door that did not seem entirely shut. Jingji did not become an official. The court did not know how to reward her. To grant silver would look like buying silence. To grant office would violate rules. To grant her a chaste and righteous title was something she refused. In the end, the emperor allowed the Lin family to keep its old library and exempted their fields for 5 years. Outsiders called her foolish. She had rendered great service and did not know how to ask for wealth. She only smiled. After seeing wealth traded for relief grain, she no longer found it bright. She opened the Lin family library to poor students. At first, only a few children of petty clerks came. Later, there were daughters of merchants, children of cart drivers, and even youths who had once wandered around Hanggu Wharf. Jingji taught them characters, accounts, and how to tell real documents from false ones. Someone asked why a girl should learn such things. She answered, so that when someone hands you a confession, you know how to see whether the signature is real. The sentence spread through the capital and became a joke, yet more mothers quietly brought their daughters to her.
They did not say they hoped their children would change the world. They only hoped that if their family one day met trouble, their daughters would know how to read a sealing notice, how to ask why, and how not to tremble so that they signed a paper that could ruin everyone they loved. Jingji accepted them all. Each child who stepped into the library was like a small lamp lit in a long, dark room. Xie Yuan occasionally came by. He did not enter, only stood outside the gate watching the children read, his expression hard to read. Once, Jingji went out to meet him, and he handed her a stack of files. The private records of the inner treasury from that year, not enough to convict the emperor, but enough for later generations to understand. She accepted them in surprise. "Your Excellency is not afraid I will write it down?" "Afraid," he answered very plainly, "but I am old. Old people sometimes wish to owe a little less." Jingji looked at him. Her resentment toward Xie Yuan did not vanish. He had been silent. He had calculated. He had used her as a piece in his game. Yet he had also opened the road at Chang'an, pulled the emperor to Qinglong Temple, and now placed in her hands the part of the truth the court did not want recorded. People were not wholly clean or wholly stained, as stories like to claim. Some were both the blade and the hand that stopped the blade. Understanding that did not make her forgive him immediately, but it taught her that judgment required more than anger. As for Shen Yi, he often came in the afternoons, bringing strange cases and borrowing her students to copy files. He still smiled often, still looked lazy to outsiders, but the court of judicial review under him had begun to change. Some old cases were reopened, some jailers were punished for coercion, some minor officials learned that even one wrong seal could be investigated to the end. These changes were not as loud as the drums before Xuanzang Hall, but they lasted longer than slogans.
One day, a child asked Jingji, "Teacher Lin, do you regret it? If you had signed that night, would fewer people have been lost?" The entire library fell silent. Jingji set down her book. This was a question she had asked herself through many nights. If she had signed, Granny Queen might still be selling tea, Ma Gui might still be hiding, Gao Ping might have lived out his final years in a Taoist temple. Her mother might not have been taken, Chang'an might not have been cursed by the world, Shen Yi might not have nearly lost everything. But if she had signed, her father would forever be named a corrupt official. The people of Chang'an would remain numbers erased from a page. The Eastern Palace would continue raising troops, and the children before her would learn that when power placed a paper in front of them, the only way to live was to bow. She answered, "I regret that I was not strong enough to save everyone, but I do not regret refusing to bow." The child asked again, "Then does refusing to bow mean not being afraid of anyone?" Jingji smiled. "No, refusing to bow means that even when you are very afraid, you still know there are things that cannot be sold. The name of an innocent person, the life of the poor, your own signature, and the right to ask why." Outside the courtyard, apricot blossoms began to open. Spring returned to Chang'an as if no red had ever fallen beneath the snow. The imperial city remained high, the court bells still rang, officials still bowed before the dragon desk. But in a small library in the southern quarter, children were learning to read truth from fragile strokes of ink. They did not know what the future would become. Jingji did not know either. She only knew that every age placed a confession before someone, and every age needed someone brave enough to cross it out. Many years later, the historians of Great Yu wrote of the Chang'an case in cautious words. Crown Prince Jin embezzled relief silver, raised troops unlawfully, and was deposed. Director Lin Huaijin was cleared. His daughter Jingji rendered service by presenting evidence. Only a few brief lines. There was no Granny Queen, no Ah Ro, no Ma Gui weeping at Hanguang Wharf, no Chang'an breaking with her engagement, no Shen Yi digging through tunnels at night, and no question that had made all of Xuanzang Hall fall silent. But in the handwritten record hidden inside the Lin family library, Jingji wrote more. She wrote every name. She wrote the mistakes of the living, Xie Yuan's silence, and her own fear. On the final page, she did not end with praise of justice. She wrote only, "Truth does not win by itself. It needs those who keep it, speak it, pay for it, and read it again in later years. If one day this record reaches your hands, do not believe me too quickly. Look for yourself, ask for yourself, decide for yourself whether to bow." The spring wind turned the page. Jingji sat by the window listening to students reading in the courtyard. Sunlight fell on her father's brush, bright as a tear that had dried. She dipped the brush in ink and wrote 4 final words.
Chang'an has not awakened. Then she stopped and looked at the sky above the tiled roofs. No, perhaps Chang'an had begun to wake, very slowly, with great pain, but it no longer slept as peacefully as before. And as long as even one person refused to bow, no night, however long, could not avoid being cut open by dawn.
Hey there! If you enjoy our audio content, don't forget to hit that like button and share this video with your friends. Most importantly, click subscribe and ring the bell to stay updated with everything Zuzu Audio. Support the channel and join our community today.